review. So let's begin. First, we're going to review vocabulary. So, if you notice here, I have many adjectives. They are describing personality. So I want you to think of a synonym or a simple definition for each of them. If there is any of these adjectives that you don't remember, please look for the synonym or a definition in Google. Pause the video while you work on this, please. Great, let's go ahead and continue. Now, here I have some nouns, and if you remember, we learned some prepositions that are used after these nouns. So, for example, advertisements. Should we use advertisements with, advertisements for, or advertisements between? That's right, we say advertisements for. Now pause the video and work on the rest, please. Then come back to check. Okay, let's see. We should have cause, of, concern, about, effect, on, increase in, impact on, influence on, link between, problem with, reason for, relationship between, research on, rise, in, and viewing of. Did you have the same? Great job. Let's continue. Now, here we have some verb and noun collocations, but we need to match them. For example, should you say that something affects a class or a grade? That's right, it affects a grade. Now, pause the video and continue matching. Please notice that some of the words here, you might need them for more than one verb. Pause the video, please. Okay, it's time to check. So you catch up on your work. You complete a question. Something counts toward a grade. You fall behind on your work. You can finish a question, but you can also finish a test. You leave a question blank. You miss a class. You raise your hand. You struggle with a class. And you turn in a test. Okay? Great. Now, if you don't remember any of these words, please write it down so we can solve your questions in class. Let's continue. Okay, now we're going to review some conversation strategies. So here we have some phrases and questions, and what we need to do is to identify what they are doing. For example, the first one. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, my sister wanted me to. Is this expression adding a comment? Asking for a confirmation? Asking for more information? Expressing something that doesn't surprise you? Interrupting a story? Introducing a comment? Resuming a story? If you notice, the first phrase, anyway, where was I, is resuming a story. Now pause the video and work on the rest, please. Then come back to check. Okay, so the next one. But you watched the video, right? Is asking for a confirmation, like a yes/no question. I forgot to do my homework, which never happens. Here, I am just adding a comment. If you remember, if you use which, then you can add an extra comment. My mom was always listening to Luis Miguel. No wonder I dislike him now. Here, no wonder is expressing that this, of course, doesn't surprise me. Now that I think about it, she's constantly texting. Now that I think about it, is interrupting a story. So, why did you get late last night? Here, I want more information. You know what I love? Drinking hot chocolate on rainy days. If you remember, you know what I love is introducing a comment. Did you have the same answers? Great. Now let's go ahead and continue. We're going to work on our grammar review. So first, if you remember, we saw many tenses. So here we have some examples here. Then I have what these sentences are doing, and I have the tense that I used. A modal verb, past verb to be, etc. For example, can you open the door? What is can? That's right. It is a modal verb. Now, how do we use them? If you remember, modal verbs have very specific functions. They might be giving permission, asking for a favor, talking about necessities, etc. Now, pause the video and continue matching. Then come back to check. Okay? Great. Elvis was a great singer. This is talking about a past state. And of course, we're using the passive verb to be. If you remember, the passive verb to be is was and were. Have you ever been to Italy? Here we're talking about a finished or unfinished action that is connected to the present. And this is, of course, present perfect. Now, how do we form present perfect? That's right. We use our auxiliaries have or has and the past participle of our verb. Next, how old are you? Here we're asking about a present state, and we're using the present of verb to be. I'm reviewing tenses. Here we're talking about an action that is in progress, and we're using present continuous. If you remember here, we use the verb to be, am, is, or are, and our verb with ing. Next, I played soccer in school. This is a finished action, and we used simple past. Now, how do we form the simple past of regular verbs? That's right, we add d or ed at the end of our verb. If it is irregular, of course, we need to memorize it. I haven't taken dancing lessons. Here we're talking about an unfinished action connected to the present and of course is still true. Present perfect continuous. Similar to present perfect, you are using your auxiliary have or has. Here you need to use been and then your next verb goes with ing. 8. I wake up at 7. Here we're talking about an action that is true, a habit, a routine. And this is of course simple present. Remember that when you have he, she, or it, you should add an s or an es to your verb. And finally, I was watching a movie is talking about an action that was in progress in the past, and it was possibly interrupted. We used past continuous. Remember verb to be, was or were, and your verb with ing. Let's go ahead and continue. Okay, so here I have some sentences, and if you notice they are incomplete, please complete them using the verbs in parentheses. Let's do the first one together. When Carol last night, my favorite TV show. When Carol called last night, I was watching, right? This action was in progress. Pause the video and work on the rest, please. Okay, we're going to check it together. Now, pause the video and work on these other sentences as well. Okay, once again, we're going to check this during our class. Let's continue. So, I want you to please pause this video, read the sentences, and remember what they are talking about. If you remember, all of these sentences are talking about habits. So, let's go ahead and review. So, you can use the expression tend to and your verb to express a habit. It's one of the easiest ways. Now, if you want to use will to express a habit, just remember that you need a frequency expression or a frequency adverb, like always or every once in a while. If you want to express that a habit is extremely common, then remember to use a word like constantly or always when using present continuous. But if you have two habits happening at the same time, then you should use present continuous and also simple present. Remember, your main action should be the present continuous one, and the secondary would use simple present. Here, you may of course use a frequency adverb just like normally. Great, let's continue. So, let's read these two sentences. Those boys who are playing soccer are my cousins. I like to watch movies which are based on real events. we're talking about defining and non-defining relative clauses. And remember, they are usually connected with defining pronouns, such as who, which, where, when, that, and others. The first sentence, if you notice, is using a non-defining relative clause because this is giving me extra information. If I eliminate that clause, those boys are my cousins, I can still understand my sentence. I like to watch movies which are based on real events, which are based on real events is a defining clause because it's giving me essential information. If I just say I like to watch movies, it seems incomplete. What kind of movies do I like, right? Okay, so here we need to decide if I'm referring to a defining or a non-defining clause. For example, these clauses give me extra information. Is this referring to a defining or a non-defining clause? That's right, this is a non-defining clause. Now pause the video and work on the rest, please. Okay, let's go ahead and check. So, these clauses use a comma before and after the clause. This is of course non-defining. Definitely you will use the comma before the non-defining clause, and if you have something else later, you will use another comma. These clauses give essential information. Defining. They can use any relative pronoun such as who, which, that, etc. Defining. These clauses cannot use that. Non-defining clauses, very good. They can be reduced when followed by a subject. Defining. If you remember there, we can of course eliminate the relative pronoun. They cannot be reduced if they are followed by a verb. Once again, these are defining clauses, but if you have a verb, please do not who, which, or that. These clauses cannot be reduced at all. Non-defining, very good. And these clauses do not use commas. Defining, great. Now let's go ahead and continue. Now, we also talked about that clauses. So if you remember, that clauses give us information, and they are used to enrich a conversation or a text with more details about something. They are used to connect ideas into a single sentence, and you cannot replace that by a relative pronoun such as which or who. So if you're not sure, try to change it. If it doesn't make sense, then please do not do it, just stay with that. Now, here I have some examples, and we need to identify the structures that are followed by a that clause. Pause the video while you work on this. Okay, let's go ahead and check. So, the first sentence is using the second structure, noun plus be. A problem with TV, a noun phrase in this case, verb to be is, and then our that clause, that it reduces students' reading. Next sentence is using structure number 1. It is clear that TV viewing contributes to inactivity. We're of course using verb to be and our adjective, then that clause. What is disturbing is that TV may have an effect on language development. Number 4. What's an adjective, in this case disturbing, verb to be, and of course that. Experts claim that watching TV is one cause of obesity. Then we're using number 3, just a verb like claim, know, or think in our dot clause. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and review a little bit more. So, if you remember, we talked about simple past and past continuous, and they are actions that are already finished. They don't have a connection to the present. For example, I graduated from school in 2011. I was thinking about what to study in university back then. Whereas present perfect and present perfect continuous have a connection to the present. I have only traveled to 3 countries so far. Now, if you notice, yes, this action is in the past. However, I can travel in the future, and this of course would change. So it's still connected. Next, I have been teaching English for more than 10 years. This is of course something that continues until right now, so of course it is connected. So here we have some examples, and we need to match the use of the verbs that I have here in different colors. For example, my friend tried to do some bike tricks, but he always fell. If you remember, this is an event that happened right after the other, right? So 2, 3, 4 past events that happened like one after the other. Now, pause the video and identify the other two. Okay, let's see. He had been practicing a lot in the past few months, but he had always failed miserably. Here we're talking about an event that happened for a period of time before another event. He had already been in the hospital 3 times before, but this time he needed to have surgery. An event that happened before another event. However, this might not have been in progress. So if you remember, we are using simple past. We're also using past perfect and past perfect continuous. And now, we are going to put everything into practice. So please go to your student book page 40, exercise 1. Here, you need to complete the conversations using the correct form of the verbs given. You already have an example there. Pause the video while you work on this. Okay guys, we're going to check this exercise during our class. Now, go to exercise 2. Here you need to complete the sentences using who, that, or which. If you can leave this pronoun out because it's a defining clause and it has a subject, then write a parenthesis. But remember that sometimes there is more than one correct answer. Pause the video, please. Okay, one more time, we're going to check this during our class. Now, let's go to the next page, page 41, and this time we're working on exercise 4. Here, we need to complete the sentences using the expressions in the box. And we need to use the correct form of the verbs. For example, I missed a class last week, which is too bad. The teacher reviewed stuff for the final exam. Now pause the video and work on the rest, please. Great. Now, work on exercise 5a. Here, we need to complete the story with the verbs given. We might need to use the simple past, past perfect, or even past perfect continuous. But remember that sometimes there is more than one correct answer. Okay, now that you finished, work on part B, which is to add these expressions, when I think about it, it's no wonder that, etc., into the squares right here. Once again, pause the video while you work on this. Okay, great. We're going to check all of these during our class. I will see you then. Bye-bye!